New studies suggest that the first humans to arrive in the Americas lived thousands of years with prehistoric giants. These findings suggest that the lives of the first Americans were very different, and that they may have spent at least 10,000 years sharing prehistoric savannas and wetlands with huge beasts, such as sloths and mastodons. Sloths weren't always slow, hairy tree dwellers. Their prehistoric ancestors were huge, up to 4 tons, 3.6 metric tons, and when frightened, they brandished immense claws. For a long time, scientists believed that the first humans to arrive in the Americas soon wiped out these giant ground sloths by hunting, along with many other mammoth animals such as mastodons, saber-toothed cats, and dire wolves that once roamed North and South America. But new research at several sites is beginning to suggest that man arrived in the Americas earlier, perhaps much earlier than previously thought. These discoveries suggest that the lives of the first Americans were very different, and that they may have spent millennia sharing prehistoric savannas and wetlands with huge beasts. There was this idea that humans came and killed everything very quickly, which is known as Pleistocene cruelty, says Daniel Odess, an archaeologist at White Sands National Park in New Mexico. But the new discoveries suggest that humans lived with these animals for at least 10,000 years, without causing them to go extinct. Some of the most tantalizing clues come from an archaeological site in central Brazil called Santa Elina, where bones of giant ground sloths show signs of having been manipulated by humans. Some species had bony structures on their backs, called osteoderms, similar to the plates of today's armadillos, which could have been used to make ornaments. In a laboratory at the University of São Paulo, researcher Miriam Pacheco holds a round sloth fossil, about the size of a penny, in the palm of her hand. Notice that its surface is surprisingly smooth, that the edges appear to have been deliberately polished, and that there is a small hole near one edge. We believe that it was intentionally altered and used by the ancients as a jewel or ornament, he says. 3 similar hanging fossils are visibly different from osteoderms not worked on a table. They have a rough surface and no holes. These Santa Elina artifacts are about 27,000 years old, more than 10,000 years before scientists thought humans arrived in the Americas. At first, the researchers wondered if the artisans were working on already ancient fossils. But Pacheco's research suggests that the ancients carved fresh bones shortly after the animals' deaths. Their findings, along with other recent discoveries, could help rewrite the story of humans' arrival in the Americas and the effect they had on the environment they encountered. Scientists know that the first humans emerged in Africa, then moved to Europe and Asia-Pacific before reaching the last continental frontier, America. But questions remain about the last chapter of the story of human origins. Pacheco was taught at the Institute the theory that most archaeologists maintained throughout the 20th century. What I learned in school was that Clovis was the first. Clovis is a site in New Mexico where archaeologists found projectile points and other artifacts dated to between 11,000 and 13,000 years ago, in the 1920s and 13,000 years ago. This date coincides with the end of the last ice age, a time when an ice-free corridor probably emerged in North America, which suggests that the first humans moved to the continent after crossing the Bering Land Bridge from Asia. And because the fossil record shows the widespread decline of the American megafauna from the same time, with North America losing 70% of its large mammals and South America more than 80%, many researchers surmise that the arrival of humans caused mass extinctions. It was a nice story for a while, when everything fell into place, says paleoanthropologist Brianna Pobiner of the Smithsonian Institution's Human Origins Program. But it doesn't work as well anymore. Over the past 30 years, new research methods, including ancient DNA analyses and new laboratory techniques, along with the examination of more archaeological sites and the inclusion of more diverse scholars across the Americas, have turned the old narrative upside down and raised new questions, especially about chronology. Richard Farina, a paleontologist at the University of the Republic of Montevideo in Uruguay, says anything older than 15,000 years is still under intense scrutiny. But really compelling evidence from increasingly older sites continues to come to light. In São Paulo and at the Federal University of São Carlos, Pacheco studies the chemical changes that occur when a bone becomes a fossil. This allows his team to analyze when the sloth's osteoderms were likely modified. We found that osteoderms were carved before the fossilization process into fresh bones, that is, between a few days and a few years after the sloths died, but not thousands of years later. His team also tested and ruled out several natural processes, such as erosion and gnawing on animals. The research was published last year in the journal Proceedings of the Royal Society B. One of his collaborators, paleontologist Thais Pansani, who recently worked at the Smithsonian Institution, is analyzing whether the bones of sloths of similar age found in Santa Elina were charred by man-made fires, which burn at temperatures different from those of natural fires. Their preliminary results suggest that fresh sloth bones were present in human camps, although it is unclear whether they were deliberately burned for cooking or simply in close proximity. It is also testing and ruling out other possible causes of black marks, such as natural chemical discoloration. The first site widely accepted as older than Clovis was Monte Verde, Chile. Buried under a peat bog, the researchers discovered 14,500-year-old stone tools, pieces of preserved animal skins, and various edible and medicinal plants. Monte Verde was a shock. "You're here, at the end of the world, with all this preserved organic material," said Vanderbilt University archaeologist Tom Dillahay, a longtime Monte Verde researcher. Other archaeological sites suggest even earlier dates for human presence in the Americas. One of the oldest sites is the Arroyo del Vizcaino in Uruguay, where researchers are studying apparent man-made cut marks on animal bones and dated to about 30,000 years ago. In the White Sands of New Mexico, researchers have discovered human footprints dated between 21,000 and 23,000 years ago, as well as footprints of giant mammals of similar age. But some archaeologists say it's hard to imagine humans repeatedly traversing a site and leaving no stone tools behind. "They've made a strong case, but there are still some things about that site that baffle me," said David Meltzer, an archaeologist at Southern Methodist University. "Why would people leave footprints for a long period of time, but never any artifacts?" White Sands Odess said he expected and welcomed such challenges. "We didn't set out to find anything that was the oldest. In reality, we have only followed the evidence as far as it has taken us." Although the exact timing of humans' arrival in the Americas remains controversial and may never be known, it seems clear that if the first settlers arrived earlier than previously thought, they did not immediately decimate the giant beast they encountered. And the traces of White Sands preserve some moments of their first interactions. As interpreted by Odess, one set of footprints shows a giant sloth advancing on all fours when it encounters the footsteps of a small human who has just passed by. The huge animal stops and rears up on its hind legs, shuffles its feet, and then heads in another direction,